Good afternoon. My name is Ariana Shives. I'm currently a student in the Master of Science of Social Entrepreneurship program here in the Marshall School of Business. I would like to introduce you to the Purpose-Driven Business Panel with Cassie Fowler, Rachel Sumek, Britt Moore-Gilmore, and moderated by Abby Pfeiffer Mandel of the USC Brittingham Social Enterprise Lab.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
And hello, everyone. Pretty good day so far? Yeah. I feel like it's been a great day so far. Have we already done several thank yous of the organizers of today's conference? Can we do it again? Yes. I'm Abby Pfeiffer Mandel. I'm the executive director of the Brittingham Social Enterprise Lab. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank our panelists today for making the time to be here with all of the participants so we can hear a little bit about your work and some of the things that you've experienced in starting your businesses. So at the Brittingham Social Enterprise Lab, we provide students with business skills and confidence to take on the world's trickiest social issues. So we're interested in poverty alleviation, in healthcare, in environment, in equity, in education. And from our perspective, we do this by providing students with business skills. So we're interested in all the skills that anyone else would be learning by going to business school, in accounting and finance and human resources and supply chain. One of the ways that I like to describe this, if you think about, are there travelers in the room, folks who get out and travel a lot? That feels modest. I think more than just that, get out and travel a lot. So you can imagine that any place you've ever gone in the world, you've been able to buy a can of Coke or a bottle of Coke in some places. And that's because as a business enterprise, Coca-Cola is financially incentivized to put their products on the shelves of as many markets in the world as they possibly can. That's why, despite barriers in roads and in electricity and in different markets that are hard to enter, Coca-Cola has made it a priority to get their product everywhere, because there's a financial incentive to do that. One might then ask the question, why are there not anti-malaria pills everywhere in the world, for example? They're all the same challenges in terms of marketing and supply chain and accounting and finances. And one company has a financial incentive to do that, and other companies don't necessarily. So at the risk of oversimplifying, that's why our center is interested in providing our students with business skills and resources to be able to make the kinds of decisions that would put anti-malaria pills everywhere in the world, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the ways that we do that is through our Master of Science in Social Entrepreneurship and a range of other programs. So I'm interested in that from a business perspective, and I'm interested in thinking about how to solve these challenges from the perspective of business. But I also know that there are many, 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 many ways to solve these problems everywhere in the world. So I was particularly interested in being here today with the three of you, who each have a particular social issue that's meaningful to you, and a specific approach of how you've gone about solving it. So before we kind of dig into conversation, can we take a minute for each of you to describe what it is that you do, the issue that you're trying to solve, and how you have approached it from your perspective? And we can start with Rachel.
Sure. So hi, everyone. Thank you for being here listening to us share about our work. My name is Rachel Sumek, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of an organization called Swipe Out Hunger. We believe that no college student should have to go hungry while they're getting their degree, and we do this by allowing students who have extra money on their meal plan to share those meal credits with their peers who are hungry. We have the program at USC. Has anyone here donated meal points in the past? Yes. It's wonderful. And so we believe that often the solutions that we need are the resources for the solutions are already in our own hands, and we're just not thinking creatively enough about how we're using the supply chain or the resources around us. We started at the school across town. I'm respectful, I won't say it, but we're very proud. But we really just began as a group of friends, myself and a couple of friends in our dorm room, swiping our own meal cards. And now we've been able to grow to campuses across 23 states. We've served over 1.5 million meals. Note, these are nourishing, warm dining hall meals. We believe that we shouldn't also relearn the experience of food banks and whatnot. We know that people need nourishing food. We've been able to pass tens of millions of dollars in legislation and lobby the state to fund these programs on college campuses. And we are on a mission to make sure that every student knows that the campus was made for them, regardless of the background they came from. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Cassie Fowler. So honored to be here, and very much like Abby, I'm really passionate about the connectivity and the fabric between the public and private sector to help solve some of the world's most pressing issues. I help lead a company out in Venice Beach called Pledgelane, and we are a social impact agency and a technology platform that believes the most iconic brands of the future are going to be those with the greatest social impact. We can demonstrate this not only through how businesses give back, but also according to their own business ROI. So social impact ROI combined with business ROI, we call this the ROI of impact. And this is what we help power for almost 3,000 businesses now. When I joined the company, we had about 15 business and company clients, and now, like I said, we're almost at 3,000, so it's been an incredible trajectory and growth because of the market demand. We know today that 9 out of 10 consumers, if you can believe that, 90% of consumers will choose to support a brand that gives back over one that doesn't. If you have a water bottle, one that gives back versus one that doesn't, most people will choose the one that gives back. My jewelry today is a perfect example of that, which Britt's going to talk about. We do this for companies of all sizes, whether it's e-commerce, broadcast media, online invitation companies, marketplaces, global marketplaces. So we can't wait to dive into that more. We touch on almost every cause, theme, and issue you can imagine, and that's what I'm so passionate about too, is democratizing philanthropy and making it accessible not only to individual donors who support nonprofits, but really embedding it into our marketplaces so that consumers can be empowered with their purchasing power to make choices that help better the world in every way that we can.
Thank you.
I'm Britt. I am the president of a company called The Giving Keys. We're right over in the Arts District, and our mission is to create jobs for people that are transitioning out of homelessness. And we do that through a for-profit jewelry company. So I'm wearing it right now. Cassie's wearing a piece. We make jewelry out of keys, and we've branched into other things now, but each style or each product has a word of inspiration stamped into it. So they'll say things like hope, courage, strength, love, fearless, whatever word you need, we encourage you to get that for yourself, wear that message, embrace it for your life, and then at some point, you're gonna meet somebody that probably needs that word more than you, and we ask you to take it off and give it away as a tangible way of spreading hope and inspiration to other people. So we've been able to create over 100 jobs for people that are transitioning out of homelessness, and we can't do that alone. We work with nonprofit partners like Chrysalis, First Place for Youth, the Weingart Center, a variety of partners that help us identify candidates for our production team, and we really are focused on the workforce development and employment piece of the homeless issue. So you can come say hi to us at our store in the Arts District and check it out for yourself.
Thank you. Where are some of the places that your products are sold?
We are in Nordstrom. We're in Ron Robinson on Melrose. Mm-hmm. We sell a lot of it on our own website because you can also get custom products from thegivingkeys.com. So yeah.
And did you always know that this was an area that you wanted to go into? Or how did you end up wanting to work on homelessness as an issue?
So it's an interesting story. There's like these different moments in my life that kind of wove together. And I didn't necessarily see that they were weaving together as it happened. But it kind of goes back to a trip that I took when I was a junior in high school. I went to India. And I experienced walking out of a cafe, a young, very young child, like 6 or 7 years old, sitting with her infant sibling, asking for money. And I watched as people were walking past her and thinking, oh my God, how is anyone walking past this child? This is crazy. And I came back from that and I told my mom that I wanted to figure out a way to send money back to India to support safe houses for kids that were getting pulled off the streets or out of sex trafficking. So that was kind of like the first moment where I realized I really wanted to do something impact-driven, and my sort of process around that was, it looked like nonprofit work. which I love nonprofit work. I think there's totally an important place for nonprofit work. I've just ended up doing this in a for-profit structure now. But I would say that's like where the seed got planted. And then I always really enjoyed fashion and never thought that that was something that I was going to do for a career. But I had some conversations, and this part of the story is way too long to tell, but I had some really interesting conversations my senior year of high school with some friends of my parents that helped me understand and see how I could weave fashion and impact together and maybe do something with that. And it was a very broad strokes dream, but I kind of set my mind to going to fashion school and learning everything that I could about that industry, and maybe at some point, someday, I could do something that would help a community. So that was like the origin of it, and then a few of the little like inflection points in that story. I went to school in London for a little bit. I was on the tube riding to class, and there was a magazine next to me. I just like love how this happens in the most random moments. There's a magazine on the chair next to me. I flip it open. There's a story about Allie Houston, Bono's wife, and they had just started this clothing company called Eden, which some of you might be familiar with. And reading that story just sparked something in me. I felt like I was seeing what it could look like for the first time. And so I was like by myself reading this magazine, bawling on the train, and was like, this is what I want to do. And it was so cool to be inspired by an early model in that whole ethical fashion space. So that was a really important inflection point. And then I think another part of the story that I really like to share is that I was working on a project with a friend of mine. We were trying to figure out how we could employ some women in the West Bank that didn't have access to employment opportunities. And so I was there and was talking with his family and was sharing that I worked for the Giving Keys, and this is in 2013, so kind of early on in my time at the Giving Keys, but they were so shocked that there was a need for a company that was specifically focused on employing people transitioning out of homelessness. They're like, there's that many people that need a job, that a company should exist to do that? That would never happen in our community. Like, we would never let somebody be outside and not have a home. Like, we would invite them in. And he's like, that's crazy to me. And I sort of like connected these dots in that moment where I'm coming as this young American girl to India at 17. I'm seeing this little girl on the street, and I'm like blown away / heartbroken, shocked, devastated that people are walking past her. And now realizing how crazy what seems normal to us, like living in LA, walking, seeing people experiencing homelessness all the time, that to someone else in a different community under a different set of like cultural sort of rules, thought that that was absolutely insane.
That we
that
also
was happening.
looked crazy.
Exactly.
Right. That we all make choices all the time about how we spend our time.
Yes.
And we can pass someone on the street and think, well, maybe that's someone else's problem.
Yeah.
It's not really my problem.
Yeah.
And you had a similar moment when you were in college as well.
Yeah, and I often say hunger was never my passion. I come from a Middle Eastern background, so food was always a part of my life in a very significant way. But what really drove me was this idea of waste and all these meal swipes. Like, it made no sense to me that I had this money left over and people didn't have it. And so why was the school not letting me do something about it? We had a lot of pushback from our campus saying this is against our policy. We like logistically couldn't do it. And then having this chance to really push for that sort of change made me question, what other rules am I just buying into that I can also change? And continuing to push that forward, how I ended up here was completely just by continuing to ask that question. I became a hunger advocate. I don't think it's shameful to say that I was driven by the desire to make systems better, to serve more people, and hunger was just the impact I was having. And as we grew on to more campuses, more students, it was entirely student-run, our entire initiative of students across the country reaching out to us saying, how do I get my campus to donate my meals? Is everyone familiar with how meal plans work? You have to buy it up front, thousands of dollars, and if you don't use those points, the school keeps it. And we were collecting a couple of years in hundreds of thousands of dollars off of meal plans. And I asked myself, where does this money go that would create the largest impact? And at the time, we were serving the community, we were serving our peers, the money was just going out. And we decided to really strategically focus on this one issue. And as like a smart person, similarly to Britt, I graduated and wanted to make a difference in the world, but didn't appreciate the nonprofit landscape. I don't want to work as a cog in a machine. I tried that. I graduated. I did a year of service in Chicago as a case manager. I spent a year learning what that was like. And because I wanted to do systems change, I wanted to change the environment I was sending people out into. And the desire to make things better for more people has really gotten us where we are.
And how many campuses are you on now?
We're on over 50 campuses, and we're 4 staff in Los Angeles. And so our model is when a school reaches out to us, as I mentioned, historically it's been students saying, how do I do this? Now it's over 50% of our interest is from campus leaders, deans, faculty saying, how do we do this, right? And to remind you, we were getting pushback from those same folks just a couple of years before, and now it's administrators asking us, and now it's policymakers calling us saying, if you were to write a bill, what would it say, literally? Corporations, massive multi-billion-dollar corporations calling us saying, we're not getting any contracts from universities that don't say, we want a Swipe Out Hunger program. And so working with corporations now to really update their systems is, again, never expected to be here, but what's led us this far is this constant, startups have to iterate, you learn, you embed, and you grow. And so we've been able to have significant impact across these sectors just in the past 8 years.
Amazing. So I just want to make sure I'm hearing this correctly, because this goes back to something that Cassie shared a moment ago. So you now have enough customer pressure on these huge multinational, I'm not going to say the name, companies that do food on college campuses, Google later, who are saying, our customers have said, we don't want to hire you on our campus unless you have Swipe Out Hunger provisions in your contract.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, Cassie, I feel like Rachel's model, you can explain, and it's very clear when you say it, this is what we do on campus. Britt is able to explain kind of the customer-facing side of the model pretty clearly. Can you talk a little bit about how Pledgelane works, and if you have an example that you could show us, all the better.
Sure, absolutely. So Pledgelane, we are actually set up as a social enterprise ourselves. We are a for-profit technology company, and we have a nonprofit arm. It's a donor-advised fund foundation called the Pledgelane Foundation, which means every donation that comes through our technology platform is received by the foundation, processed by the foundation, and then redistributed to the intended nonprofit organizations. So every month we send out donations. We just hit about just over $1 million a month in donations that we're processing now that go out to thousands of different nonprofits every single month. So it's amazing because all of a sudden we're helping to create sustainable revenue streams from nonprofits from many different company sources, all through our platform and our ecosystem, and then redistributing it to them. That's our model. The customers that we work with are mainly for-profit companies. And a lot of these companies are not social enterprises. A lot of them have been around for a long time, and they come to us, and they typically say one of two things. They say, we know we want to give back. It's been important to our culture. We've been engaging our employees in different volunteerism and stuff for a while. But we need to do it as part of our brand now and engage our customers because it's that important to our survival in today's marketplaces. And so we meet them where they're at on what I like to call the impact journey and say, okay, let's figure out what brand and cause is most authentic to you and your customers. Because if it's not, it's going to be a joke. And we all see that very transparently now. There's constantly examples out there of brands that try to give back, and it comes across in really inauthentic ways and flops. So we work very strategically with them across their leadership, their customer, their brand visibility, values, mission, et cetera, to come up with what's that purpose and how do we really bring that into the business DNA and start to integrate social impact in ways that they can engage not just their employees, but their customers as well. So a brand comes to us either on that side of the impact journey, or they'll come to us and they say, we really want to support women's empowerment around the world. Which nonprofit should we support? Because this is how we want to do it. So along that impact journey, a brand comes to us at many, many different points, right? And we have to be able to meet them where they're at and service them appropriately. And then that's where our tech integration comes into play and makes it super easy and seamless for them to actually start giving back. Otherwise, it's very, very expensive for companies to try and start their own corporate social responsibility programs, cause marketing programs. There's lots of legalities around that. There's lots of structure that takes years and years to really build. So we're essentially that outsourced department for them, which is really exciting. Like I said, we do donations to every type of cause. We currently do donations to any registered, verified, and vetted organization here in the United States with 501c3 status. And we're doing more and more donations to non-US organizations. And there's an extra level of legal vetting and verification that goes into that. And we take on that back end as well. So we really try to make it frictionless, seamless, and easy for any type of business to give back. A couple of examples I'll just kind of throw out there. We work really closely with Tinder, believe it or not. We've done about a dozen different campaigns with Tinder. They're an incredibly purpose-led company, but it's never been at the forefront of their brand. So we've done some really fun and exciting things with them worldwide. We did a campaign with them around International Women's Day in 2017, which was the most successful marketing campaign in their history and the only marketing campaign with 100% positive media impressions around the world, which to them was a really core goal and KPI because they really wanted to improve their brand reputation around the world, especially with millennial women. So we work really deeply with Tinder. Evite, the online invitation company, anyone that sets up an Evite invitation can add a charity component to that invitation and their guests can start donating. For example, if I set up an Evite to my birthday, and in lieu of gifts, I want people to donate to my favorite charity, they can all do that through Evite now. That's Pledgelane built into the experience, and we do donation processing and tax receipts. So literally, it looks and feels like Evite, but that's our partnership there. And then there's a bunch of others, Discovery Inc. You might be familiar with Discovery Channel or Animal Planet, TLC, Food Network, HGTV, all those fun different channels. We power cause campaigns across all of those different properties, currently doing donations in 82 countries for them.
Amazing.
So big variety.
And can we try it? Is there any way we can try it now?
Yeah, so one part of our platform is a mobile-first platform. And actually, if you all take out your phones, you can do a little text in and see it now. I know it's not typical that in a speaking engagement we ask you to get on your phones. But if you open up a new text message, and in the to fields, you enter the number 707070, or 707070. And then in the field where you would normally type a text message, just type the word Athena and press send. And you'll, within a few seconds, get a bounce back message to your phone. And this is all going through the Pledgelane mobile platform. It's one way that we like to engage audiences to connect with brands. And in the bounce back message, you'll get links to all of our different companies and programs so that you can learn more and connect with us.
I feel like it's happening. Is it happening?
So cool.
It's pretty cool,
So
right?
cool.
That was the politest get out your phone experience I think I've ever seen in a room. So a few different ways of engaging with social impact and engaging with the world of business and social impact. And I want our attendees to see that there are many different ways to try and solve some of these big problems. I'm also really interested personally in how business is one of just many disciplines that can be engaged in the pursuit of solving these issues. And I think it would be really naive and oversimplifying to suggest that the work of business alone or selling a product alone is going to solve any of the issues that we're trying to work on here. We are not going to deal with the challenges facing women around the world by Tinder's campaign alone. This swipe out hunger is not going to solve hunger issues everywhere in the world, but it's going to come really close. It's pretty awesome. The work of responding to homelessness is not just about the 100 people that are employed currently with plans to grow and scale. So what are some of the other, how does your work, the three of your work, interact with policy, for example, with law, for example? What should we know about some of the other disciplines that you are partnered with, interested in, engaged in pursuit of the social issues that you're working on? And maybe we'll start with Britt in that regard.
So we all collectively passed Measure H and Measure HHH. Snaps for that.
Yes.
So if you're not familiar with that, it's essentially a $1 billion fund that's going to go towards building 10,000 units of permanent supportive housing for people experiencing homelessness. And we were very involved in sort of the grassroots effort in getting that passed through because we understand the housing first model is really, really important. The job is a critical piece in creating a sustainable future for somebody that's transitioning out of homelessness, but they have to become housed. And we really do believe at the Giving Keys that everyone deserves a home. So there is this intersection of, especially in LA, this affordable housing crisis that we're in. We can provide a job to somebody on our team, and I think breaking down the economics of that is probably the most helpful thing I could share. We pay living wage for our production positions. That is still not enough money for someone to really afford housing in LA County. So that's a problem, because it's supposed to be the living wage, which means you're supposed to be able to live off of it. We've had a lot of trouble with our folks who are in housing programs and are working full time, making a decent amount of money, being able to move into market rate housing or subsidized housing, even Section 8, it's like at capacity. So the way our work intersects with the housing piece is actually really important to our overall mission of wanting to end homelessness. So I think those are just some things that we've dealt with on our end, but also as you're going to the polls, there's a really interesting proposition, Prop 10. I'm not going to tell you how to vote on that, but I'm just going to ask you to educate yourself, because this is about rent control and how rent control could or could not support what's happening with the housing crisis in LA.
I feel like I want to tell people how to vote on that. See me later. I'll tell you how to vote on that. Or look up how many, many, many organizations that are not private housing companies have suggested that you should vote on Prop 10.
Yes.
I'm just going to say it. So that's happening on Tuesday. Is that right?
Tuesday, correct.
I hope everyone's registered to vote, and I hope you vote.
Yes.
A lot of people in our country right now have currently been disincentivized to vote or have their voting rights taken away from them outright. If you are a citizen of this country and you have the opportunity to vote on Tuesday, please do it for all the people who won't be able to vote on Tuesday. So that's really significant. So what happens on the ballot has an impact on the problems that you are trying to work on and the customers that you're trying to support.
Yes.
And you're also making, I think, a really interesting point about how close you are to your client. That often what happens in business is we don't often get to see the impact of our work on our clients. And you have both a customer, a paying customer, and the clients that are the purpose of having customers at all. Rachel, have you had similar experiences with that with regard to your work with policy?
Yeah, I think that the policies that we've influenced first and foremost are on college campuses. Like, what is a policy around food? Is it ethical that only certain people have access to a human right like food? So how do we change campus policy? And then I think the role of any business, anyone who wants to make a difference, isn't necessarily your own programming. It's more so, who else do you need to inspire, enroll, engage, and get them? Like, the fact that Giving Keys is, like, if you follow Britt on Instagram, which you might consider doing, you'll see that she's like always talking about what's happening and showing you the site and talking about legislation. And that influences me as a fan of Giving Keys, as a constituent of where I live, to be more engaged in these issues. So making sure that we as businesses, as organizations, are being active and influencing, because the reason why we were able to pass tens of millions of dollars in legislation to get to campuses is because there was one administrator on one of the campuses that we worked on who saw our program at work. She was then elected to the state legislature and decided to make this her issue because she was exposed to our work, right? And she just reached out. So I didn't hire a full-time person to work on this. You never know where you're going to be able to influence people. But being ready to put ego aside, understand that, like, our name couldn't be in the legislation because it's policy. You know, it's not a marketing thing. And so how do I still fully invest all the resources we need to make sure that happens?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And Cassie, you also mentioned the impact of policy in actually a primary reason why companies come to you, because it's really hard to get this off the ground. And I'm interested, did anyone here major in policy, public policy? Was that a background? No?
Fashion.
Yeah, so you're fashion. Rachel, I believe you majored in history?
I studied history. So if you ever want to learn how to run a nonprofit, you just have to learn it on the road.
You,
yeah.
right?
No, definitely ask me. I feel like the one thing I wanted to somehow get across is that no one told me to do this. In fact, many people told me I was either too nice, or I should go get a real job, or that I'm especially for the first 2 years, right? It's been 8 years, 5 years of which full time. And in the beginning, there was a lot of doubt around even the people who loved me that I could do it. And I also doubted myself. But there's this feeling that you get when you have an idea that you're someone else must be feeling this. There's no way I'm the only person that believes this is real. And maybe that idea isn't actually perfect, but the more people you speak to, the more refined it becomes. And that's how you actually get to the goal, the idea that you need to keep pushing. And we continue to evolve, but I think the way that policy happens is never through some inspired legislator. They're the most boring, right? The public sector, young people, old people, people who are inspired have an idea, they influence policy, and it becomes so proven that now businesses also take it on. So it has to start with outsiders to push things forward.
And how did you all know when to start? Cassie, how did you know that this was the work that you wanted to be doing? And students ask me this all the time. They come and say, I have this great idea, but I should probably go out and get some real business experience first, right? So when is the best time to start a business, a purpose-driven business or otherwise?
My gosh, when you feel it in your heart, that would be my answer. I didn't start out as a business person or a tech person, and I'm helping to run a tech company now, but a very mission-driven tech company. I actually started out as a nonprofit person. I spent my youth, my teenage years, a lot of my college years, working, volunteering, just really entrenched in the nonprofit space. And then when I graduated college, I studied political science, and I went to work for, I went and lived in London, and then I went to work for the Nobel Peace Laureates, actually, the female Nobel Peace Laureates, helping to run their nonprofit organizations, and particularly Wangari Maathai of Kenya. So I moved down to sub-Saharan Africa for a couple of years, and that was my nonprofit management, thrown into the deep end, learn the ins and outs, while also being so passionately curious about grassroots development and really wanting to understand the issues that I was learning about in university and at school, and not understanding why the political theories and the sociological theories couldn't answer them if they were so well and highly acclaimed. And I thought there's got to be more to this, and I really want to understand it. So I wanted to get my hands dirty, and that's what I got to go do, and I absolutely loved it. And through that process, I got to set up the first corporate social responsibility partnerships for the nonprofits of the Peace Laureates. And that was my firsthand experience and education about the policy restrictions, the level of complexity involved in setting up cause marketing partnerships from the nonprofit side. And I thought there's got to be a better way. This is the future of philanthropy, because it was so transformative for our organizations when, for example, Google approached me. This is when Google.org was forming back in 2005 or 6, perhaps. And they came down to Kenya and they said, we really want to do something. We want to engage our employees. We're setting up a foundation. We want to support the Greenbelt movement and these other organizations. And part of my responsibility at a really young age was trying to figure that out and navigate those business conversations with our nonprofit needs of the communities on the ground that we were serving. And I thought, the intersection here, this is where the future lies. If we can connect the business world with the nonprofit space and create sustainable revenue streams, this will be transformative, because the nonprofit industry is so broken in a lot of ways, reliant on one-off individual donations. And so, long story short, all these years later, that's what I get to help do through technology. And it's incredibly empowering and motivating when I see that the market and the world has finally woken up to the fact that as a consumer, not only as a donor, but I get a choice in how I get to purchase ethically made products, incredible brands like the Giving Keys, And how do I really help uplift those and empower those and democratize access to all of these different brands and make it really easy for them to give back? And on the policy side, we continue to speak with attorney generals and policymakers about how do we really simplify cause marketing laws in a way that still protect the nonprofit interests, but also empower the customers and the consumers, so it's a more even ground.
Amazing, thank you. So we're winding down now on our time. I'm wondering if any of you have, we didn't talk about this in our pre-panel phone call. If anyone have a book, a movie, a work of art, a podcast, a magazine, a documentary you've seen recently, a show you went to recently that you think people in this room should know about, I'll start. I'm big into Serial season 3 right now. What about you all?
I have one. If you haven't seen 13th, it's a documentary about mass incarceration by Ava DuVernay. Go watch it. It's on Netflix.
That's a good one.
I just read The Messy Middle by Scott Belsky, who created Behance and is a VP at Adobe and is a VC. And it's about like what happens in the middle years of a startup. Everyone talks about how to get launched. Everyone talks about the acquisition, but like how do you deal with all the turbulence in the middle and then also make sure you land the sale?
Awesome.
I think as mission-driven women and entrepreneurs in today's day and age, there's a tendency to overcommit ourselves, and it's really, really easy to do between professional and personal lives, and that's something I'm constantly challenged by and continue to try and grow and learn in my life in those areas. There's a great book called Essentialism that's out there right now. I would highly recommend that, and there's also one of my favorite books is by Wangari Maathai, the laureate that I had the honor to work with, called Unbowed. And it's a beautiful read if you're ever curious about grassroots development across Africa through her eyes. I highly recommend it.
Boom, I say to that.
Great question.
Thank you all so much for being here today, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.